So are the Kansas City Chiefs lucky? Well, lucky in what sense? What does that mean? I mean, let's be honest. We all have that one friend who said the Chiefs weren't even good last year. They were lucky. Other teams kept beating themselves, and all the Chiefs had to do was waltz to a championship. Well, okay, obviously that's a little silly. But was there some breaks that went their way? I think that while most people kind of say that the game against Miami, they were clearly the better team. And the Super Bowl, no, I didn't really hear people say the Chiefs were lucky to win that one. I definitely heard against Buffalo and against Baltimore, though, people bring up the lucky factor. So I wanted to kind of make a video and challenge the lucky factor in all of this. First, with Buffalo, there was obviously the missed field goal, which, that was a big one, right? As the Bills could have tied the game. But it is worth mentioning that, kicking a field goal is a part of the game, and part of the Chiefs not having that issue is because they have Harrison Butker, who's a really good field goal kicker and consistently hits the clutch ones. So, well, yes, that was a bit of luck. I mean, it was, looked like the wind actually caused the ball to go wide more than anything else. So, yeah, definitely a bit lucky there. Something that with no credit to them, really, they were able to keep 3 points off the board in a key spot in the game. At the same time, it's worth mentioning, a minute and 47 seconds left when the field goal attempt started in a 3-point game. The Chiefs would have had 2 timeouts. I mean, that's certainly not like overtime was imminent or that the Bills were going to win. In fact, the odds are at that spot, the Chiefs still had a really high likelihood of winning that game, even if that field goal kick went in. But even forgetting about that, again, if we're talking about kind of maybe fluke plays that had pretty big swings, I mean, the Chiefs had a goal line fumble in this situation. And again, lucky is relative, right? Does this count as lucky or does this not count as lucky? Is this a lucky play that the Bills were able to force this? Or was it, you got to give them credit, the Bills made a play and the Chiefs screwed it up? It's one of those things where I've been of the theory for a while that the reason why people always consider Tom Brady to be lucky, like, the Adam Vinatieri kicks, the Malcolm Butler play, all of these things, how many things went right in the Patriots Super Bowl 51 of, if only Kyle Shanahan ran the ball, all that stuff, right? My theory on all of this has been when there's a close game, you typically are going to have instances where both teams made mistakes. And if that happens, it's a close game, both teams made 3 crucial mistakes, but the team that wins, you forget all the mistakes. The teams that lose, you think about those mistakes and therefore kind of view the winning team as a bit lucky. You could argue the Malcolm Butler interception was kind of just one player making a great play, which it's not luck, but maybe Tom Brady, quote unquote, got lucky that happened. But at the same time, the Patriots were unlucky to play prior when Jaron Kearse made a crazy acrobatic catch right before that. Another example that I would think of would be in the infamous Rams Saints conference championship game where there was that crazy no call that allowed the Rams to have another opportunity to get a chance to try and tie the game. Yes, it was a bad no call, but people forget there was a bad face mask call earlier in the game that forced the Rams to have to settle for a field goal when they could have had 1st and goal had that been called correctly. Usually only the calls that benefit the eventual victor are the ones that are remembered. Another aspect I think as well is, if you have a bad call that, hurts you, but then you're able to overcome it, well, then, no one really thinks about it. But if you are someone who, has a bad call go against you and aren't able to overcome it, well, then it becomes known. To make a couple more historic examples, the famous tuck rule game, which, I don't think that was the right call. I think they, even with the rules of the tuck rule, I think that was ruled incorrectly and should have been a fumble. Brady then went down the field, got the game-tying field goal. Vinatieri made an incredibly clutch kick, and then they went on to win in overtime. Whereas, the Indianapolis Colts with Phillip Rivers that one playoff year had a similar situation. Kind of a last-minute drive got extended due to what I thought was a bad call, but they still lost the game. They weren't able to convert, and therefore the Bills won, and no one remembers that bad call. So, okay, I talked a lot about different things, but that still doesn't answer the question. Is being lucky a thing, and have the Chiefs been lucky? Well, kinda. I like the Bills game. I don't think they were really lucky, but the Ravens game's a little different. For one thing, you think about how, how many bad decisions did Lamar make? Throwing into triple coverage, he did not have his best game. Obviously, Zay Flowers extending for the goal line instead of just, going down. And you look at the total yards in this game, the Ravens outgained the Chiefs in terms of total yards, and also even more so in terms of yards per play, a 1.5 yards per play more than what the Chiefs had in that game. I think if you want to say the Chiefs were lucky, this game is probably your best way to do it. Best way to make the argument would be this game, because I do think you can look at the Ravens did outgain the Chiefs. The Ravens did play uncharacteristically poor in certain aspects that if the Chiefs caught them on a normal day, maybe that doesn't happen. But again, the mental game is a part of football, right? And the fact that the Chiefs were able to frustrate the Ravens into making mental mistakes certainly might have been a part of why they were able to get quote unquote lucky. These things don't exist in vacuums. And I would also mention that, if we're going to talk about, listen, I think it's something where, for me personally, I believe luck is a part of the game. I think luck actually doesn't get talked about the way that it probably should when it comes to sports. People talk about it in hockey, where in hockey, that is kind of the one sport where people bring it up. Let's say a team outshoots another team 40-20. People kind of assume the team that, had 40 shots is going to win more often than not. Even if they happen to lose that game, you'll still kind of take away, kind of have a positive takeaway and say, okay, well, their other goalie happened to have a good game. That's not going to happen every night. If that's game one of a series, you're still feeling pretty good about yourself if you're a team who had 40 shots. But in football, people tend to not do that as much. People tend to say if you got outgained, they'll still say, but you did other stuff. But in the Chiefs' case, they kind of did do other stuff, though. Like, for one thing, something like third down efficiency, you see the Chiefs are on the left, the Ravens are on the right. The Ravens were just 3 for 11 in third downs. And it's not like the Chiefs were like monsters on third downs, but they also made a couple of really key ones and got a couple touchdowns early on their first 2 drives that were able to kind of be the difference in what was ultimately a one-score game. And the obvious one, the turnovers. Like, listen, we can sit here and say, well, the Ravens had an uncharacteristic day of making a lot more mistakes than they usually have. Well, the Chiefs also had an uncharacteristic day of making no mistakes in terms of turnovers, which is uncharacteristic for any team. They were able to they had a good day that day. Sometimes that happens. It's not necessarily you're playing the Ravens on their worst day, because listen, the Ravens made mistakes every game they played over the course of the season, right? It's possible they were just magnified because the Chiefs had such a lack of mistakes. And also, I have to say, listen, winning 4 games against playoff teams is really hard to do. Throughout the course of most postseason runs, especially 4-game postseason runs, you are going to have an instance where the Super Bowl champion got outgained or maybe had a break go their way in a certain, aspect to ultimately find a way to win, right? That's kind of part of the issue as well, is we're looking at the 4 games they won and saying, well, there was one that they kind of got outgained by. Yes, but when you play that many postseason games, you probably are going to find a way to win a game or two that you were outgained in. And if you want to go back, and use that logic, if you go back to the conference championship game against Cincinnati that the Chiefs lost, they outgained the Bengals in that game. And I think you could argue the Chiefs made uncharacteristic mistakes in that game that you typically wouldn't expect. At the end of the day, that is football. Did the Chiefs get lucky and have breaks go their way throughout the course of this postseason? Yeah. They had breaks go their way, for sure. But that's going to happen anytime you play 4 straight games of football. There's going to be breaks that go your way. And there were things there were breaks that went against them as well throughout the course of this this postseason that people don't really talk about because they won the Super Bowl. So, well, I think it's fair to say maybe that Baltimore game is kind of the one you can really make an argument for. But at the end of the day, the right team won all 4 games. The right team won the Super Bowl. It's kind of hard to argue with that, in my opinion. So, luck's a part of the game. Yes, they had some luck go for them in some ways and go against them in other ways. But at the end of the day, they were able to pull it out and win the Super Bowl. And the right team won. That's all that matters. At least that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.